Shock and Power, episode 4, coming to a channel near you. This episode, we're going to be discussing the different categories of religions represented in the United States. It's the three major ones, so I know there's a lot more. Don't chew our heads off. We're just going over the major three right now. And as a later episode, we could go down that rabbit hole if you want to go down deeper. And we're also going to be going over Bill of Rights. We'll read them out and we'll go over our opinions on why they were written and what their purposes were. And Bill of Rights are the first through the 10th Amendments of the United States Constitution. So I guess starting it off, the first religion is for us would be Christianity, the ones that the religion that we believe in ourselves. And it's all of the religions are that we're going to be discussing today are monotheistic. So there's only one God to us, and we all have different perspectives on who the prophets are and what the ultimate outcomes of everything will be. And eventually we'll all figure out what the truth is, but probably not while we're alive. So as Christians, they believe in the Trinity, which is the God, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's all one. As described in the beginning of the Bible, the God references himself in plural, says us, we've created the earth. So that's how, that's kind of the start of our belief. We kind of pick it up where Judaism leaves off, and we go down a little bit further where Jesus, our perception, which we believe is the Son, or also the God, came down to earth and died for our sins and then was resurrected, and he defeated death in order to save us. He was the ultimate sacrifice. There's a lot of sacrifice described in the Jewish religion, and Jesus' sacrifice was the last one that was required, according to our belief.
That's why they call it the Lamb of God.
Yes. And so, we believe that in the Christian religion that what your actions have a big part to play, but it's not ultimately the reason why you would be in God's good graces. It's by his grace, which is by the sacrifice of Jesus that we're saved. And that's I would say that's probably our biggest discrepancy, is that we don't need to follow the specific laws outlined in the beginning of the Bible, and that's because we've already received the ultimate sacrifice by the Son. And I feel like it's more of a thought type of religion where it kind of gets to the core of what you believe and what you think and how you treat others. So you still have to treat others well and try to follow as many of the laws as possible that were written out, but not every one of them have to be strictly adhered to because of what we believe about Jesus. So there's many different sects. I don't know how far down the rabbit hole we're going to go about the breakdown of all the different types of Christianity, but overall, every single type ultimately leads to the belief in Jesus. So what do you think is the product of Christianity in today's society and where we are as a country?
Well, this country seems to have gone further and further from Christianity, right? A lot of the things that affect policies and political opinions surrounding certain things, such as abortion, single family unit, the nuclear family, as it were. These are things that the government seems to try to throw out the door, try to break up the family, let the babies be, aborted. And it seems like the more we move away from a Christian world, the more we go down this bad direction, almost as if, it was the right thing to do to stay in that direction. If you go to most of these places in the world that are like godless, it's like famine. It's horrible. You got to correlate it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a major factor, and part of it is just it comes down to how we treat each other. And I think that sometimes, we have a major tolerance in what we believe, where we try to, let people believe what they want as long as you maintain that sort of, I guess, moral code where you continue to treat people the right way. And the big problem is that when you stop kind of treating your community as a community and you start treating them as, like, okay, this is just another person and they could potentially be my enemy, that's where you start getting into those situations where you start to build a scarcity mindset because of it. Like, you say, I have to look out for myself, not thinking that God's looking out for you,
Right.
And I think that's a big part of it, that, when the government steps in, they will say that they're going to look out for you and they're going to take care of you. And that's where I think people start to go away from their beliefs, because they think that they're taken care of here by the people that are in charge of, central planning, and the people who kind of make big decisions that affect millions. But, at the end of the day, we only live so long. So the idea behind any of these religions is you want something to look forward to. Otherwise, you start to have I would say, a negative view on life, but that's only been my experience. Like, not going from not having a belief to knowing that something is there, or believing in faith that something is there after, kind of pushes you forward to do more things and ideally help more people ultimately. So now there's all these different churches and there's different beliefs, but according to the actual, like, the written word, the church is basically Christ, the person who brought everyone together. And it's really about, creating sort of like a brotherhood, like, love your neighbor like you love yourself. That's one of the core of what we believe is love your neighbor like you love yourself, and love God above all else. So I think that if you keep that in mind, people's actions won't bother you as much if you approach everyone with love. And I think that's the main thing, is that, like, you try to approach people with love, even if they don't approach you with love. Because it's like they say, turn the other cheek. Don't try to fight fire with fire. And sometimes it's a little difficult for us because, especially you and I have a little bit of this background where, you come up in combat sports, you're used to, the competition aspect of things. And it's tough to kind of grapple with those ideas when, there's ultimately always going to be a winner and loser in whatever we approach, like, even professionally, in sports, in anything. But, that doesn't mean that, you still shouldn't treat people with respect and love. And that's sort of where that's what I came to, my idea summary of what I think Christianity is. It's more of a helping you think, and it's not so much of follow these specific rules. It's more so, do what's right. And a lot of times the things that are right also are in the way you approach things in your own thoughts. Like, sometimes you could be doing all the right things, but if you have hate in your heart and you're angry all the time, you're kind of going against the religion. You even if you're doing something you don't want to do, you should try to always approach it with love.
Yeah.
Now, like, where do you see these things kind of going wrong for people now? Like, they just approach everything with hate. That's what it seems like, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of it's frustration, right? Especially if you live out in a city, coming from Staten Island, Brooklyn, the people are so jammed together, going to work, getting on fighting your way through the Lincoln Tunnel or the Holland Tunnel to merge from several lanes down to one to get in the tunnel, and then coming back out, trying to make a turn in the city, but people are walking, they're disobeying the walking traffic laws. It's very easy to get frustrated, especially when you're also frustrated on a much larger scale with the city planners, the people who are making decisions, who are upping the taxes, inflating the money supply. There's just so much bad going on. There's conflicts in the world. And the average person, by the time they're hit with the media 24/7, from their phone, from the TV, from the radio, and advertising, and just getting to and from work, dealing with the job that's probably already stressful enough, it's very easy to just take that stress and just, snap at somebody instead of being nice. I was really bad with that myself until I moved out into the country. When I was in the city, I was angry all the time. I was stressed out. I would argue with my, at the time, girlfriend, now wife. But since living in the country, it's a, like you said, it's a sense of community, right? My neighbors and I get along. You know, we all talk, we hang out, and I don't have that sense of stress anymore. You know, another thing that you touched on was faith. I just wanted to say real quick that faith, learning the moral compass is one thing, and learning the faith is another pillar of the religion, because everything in your life you have to have faith in, right? You have faith that you're going to wake up tomorrow. You have faith that you're going to go to work and support your family, or, you know, create a family if you don't have one. Faith that the next thing will come, the next day will come. Without faith, you're just running around scared, you know? And as far as the moral compass, the religion ain't it, if you're an archer and the target's somewhere ways out there, the religion is just trying to make you point the bow in that direction, you know? So you're not shooting off that way. Like you said, if you're running around with anger in your heart, you're shooting arrows down the wrong direction. You're not even going towards the target. You don't have to hit it every time, as long as you're shooting in the right direction.
Yeah. I think a big part of it is perspective. When you approach people with that love, you also don't automatically perceive someone with anger towards you whenever they approach you. You know, sometimes you sort of are more open and trusting. You know, sometimes that's gotten away from us, and some people have taken advantage of it. And that's where, like, you know, the con artists come in, and the people who tell you I can take care of things for you come in. It's just, you know, I think just because there's bad actors doesn't mean that you should stop trusting people. And I think that's probably a core component of it, is that, like, you have to maintain trust with people you interact with. Otherwise, it's going to be a really tough time for you, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Until they no longer deserve that trust.
right. But you have to let them prove that to you. I mean, you shouldn't automatically assume like the worst, you
Yeah.
know? And I guess that would sort of, now Christianity's all the religions have sort of the monotheistic religions that are in this country, they sort of have a path, and they all start with, I would say, Judaism, right? So that's kind of where it was like there was one God, and they believed that, you know, God revealed himself to Abraham, Moses, and the Hebrew prophets. They have an agreement with God that things are going to go well as long as they follow his rules. And it's more of I would say it's more of like a ritualistic type of religion. Not that all of them aren't, but there's just such a broad amount of laws that they have to follow. It's the details are just like incredible. If you sat there and read the book, you're just like, okay, they have to do this on this day. They have to make sure they don't eat these things. They have to eat these things. And a lot of times, you know, people come up with alternative reasons for it. Like, oh, you know, these things were bad for you at the time, or they didn't have the same technology to filter out disease. But I think at the end of the day, it was just everyone was looking to each other, and they weren't, I think that they felt that they were following something when they could actually put action in. And now I think Christianity allowed the option of, you know, the action is more in your mind. Whereas with Judaism, the action was, what do I actually need to do? Okay, I need to follow these specific steps. I need to pray this specific way. I need to go to these areas. And that's because at the time there was like a separation between the people and God, you know? And I just think that whether or not you're religious, the human being is ultimately made to worship something. So if you don't have God in your life, you'll find something else to worship. And that's what we've seen, you know, throughout society.
Yeah, I mean, you see it every day. People worship celebrities, politicians,
Yep.
the devil even.
Yeah,
Crazy.
some things like diet, or things like, like you said, celebrities, things you see on TV, they watch it constantly. It's like, you know, that's their God.
Yeah, the
And
TV.
yeah, and it's something that, you know, I think that that's a big part of why people are comfortable with the changes that have happened, because, you know, they're able to relax and they don't have the same kind of struggle. And I think that the religions played a bigger role when there was more human struggle every single day. Um, so I mean, obviously there's a lot more that we could get into, but we're both not experts on Judaism, even Christianity. We've gone through it, but there's always more to learn, and you can go through every single one of those books 50 times over and get something new each time. So that's sort of a good thing about it, that you always try to continually make yourself better. And I think that's like a core tenet of it. Make yourself better, help others. And we'll go down to the next one, which is the Islamic religion, which is probably the fastest growing religion out there right now. I mean, the major difference, they do believe in God and one God and everything, but there are certain aspects of it that embrace a different side of spreading your faith, and there's more violence there. That's just from what we've seen and the actions that have been taken. You can look at history and see like how these things have been spread, and unfortunately, it's effective. So I don't know. I can't say whether or not they're right or wrong, but I can't see that a God of love wants people to harm each other. Just because, especially because of disbelief, or because, like some people were not born into a specific family, or they don't understand what you believe in. And some of their beliefs kind of say that if they're non-believer, they have to believe, or, there's got to be some type of harm or violence. That's something that I don't think comes from God. It just comes from, the man's conquering desires inside. But there's a lot more to it. I'm looking at a like a good quick summary of it. When it comes to like the Islamic religion, they believe that the Prophet Muhammad was God's messenger, but they also include Adam, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. They believe that Jesus will return to earth before the day of judgment and restore justice and defeat the Antichrist. I mean, they do have similarities, but as you can see, as time went on, it seemed like it started out with, these are the practices I need to take, then this is the way I need to think, and then now these are the actions I need to take to make people believe this way. And I'm not sure if that's the right way to go about it, but sometimes you only know until you only believe the way you believe until something maybe changes your mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's possible. Maybe some people won't change their mind, and those are the people that now they call them like martyrs. Like, I believe in this, and I'll take it to the grave. Because that's what the faith is. But some people are easily swayed. They don't want to be hurt. People want to do whatever they can to live in peace.
Right. Well, one of the other things that separates Christianity from both Judaism and the Muslim religion is the original books. If we're talking Christianity, it would be the Old Testament. If we're talking Judaism, it's the current book, and same thing for the Muslim religion. Their God was a war god. He was a god. He was a lord of hosts, lord of armies.
Mm-hmm.
And most of what they did in the beginning after Genesis was go to war. They were at war with the Philistines. They were at war with, the other tribes, and then the giants. And then, and anyway, in any case, that was the beginning premise, right? They were sacrificing goats so they'd win the wars. And, they would bring the Lord with them in their chariot, and they bring him from place to place, and they do battle. And then they had their exodus, and they led their people away, and they started again, but then they went to war again. Each of their kings, their major prophets were soldiers or generals, if you will.
Right.
Muhammad was a general as well, so you can't really judge the whole thing because it was written at a time where that was the way of the world. Everybody was at war. People were just starting to get around each other and get a feel for each other, and everybody was different. So they wanted to make them spread more themselves and get rid of the others. But eventually, the Christ was born, and he put an end to that. I mean, to some extent, right? Because people still go to war, but the Christians at the time, they became the Gentiles, and they were the people who were gentle. Like they didn't want to do this war anymore. They didn't want to live in a tribal war society. And things started to progress from there, and they spread the word of peace and love. And Jesus was the first hippie, man.
Yeah, he was, and he definitely went around the world just speaking philosophy to people that probably had never heard it, and I think that it made people's minds shift in a way. And the thing about today is, seems like there's still wars going on about things that seem kind of trivial, and sometimes it's like you try to wonder, like, how does this happen in a world that understands all of these different types of religion? Like, there's so many different faiths. It's like, well, where is it coming from, and how can we stop it? The idea is to have people live peacefully, but I guess some people believe that no matter what they do, as long as they're following their God, they'll do it to the death.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, if we were aliens looking down on this planet, you've got these imaginary lines that separate land, right? And the people on one side of the line say, we're going to do things this way. And the people on the other side of the line say, we're going to do things that way. And then they keep people from coming across their lines unless they want them to. But then, that's one thing. But sometimes the lines are pretty serious changes, right? Like you cross the line over there and women have no rights and you can beat them if they talk back to you. You cross over this line and then no, you can't do that, and
Right.
then the confusion between the two, and that's what causes some of the conflicts, right? I don't want to get into trade and everything else, but if you were looking down on the planet, it would look kind of weird, right? That there's the same species, a little bit slightly different, maybe different color, maybe different slant to the eye, or whatever the case may be, and the people are going to hate each other just because they're in different sides of the imaginary line.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like, if that's where it comes to, if you're kind of more open and trusting, maybe you can have like that conversation when you first meet people that maybe are not like you, and try to understand them, approach them with try to like a heart of understanding, like what they believe and why they believe it. And maybe you can have like a discussion, but it doesn't seem like the discussion has been happening. It's just like, these are your actions and these are the actions that we're going to take against it. Instead of saying, okay, well, why do you believe it? Maybe we could like describe what we think, and maybe we could at least come to some form of a negotiation without having to come to force, because it doesn't help anybody.
Sometimes it's not even, sometimes it doesn't always come to force. You could do just as much damage. Well, no, that's maybe an overstatement, but you could do plenty of damage to a country financially, right? With the right financial tactics, or maybe with sanctions, or maybe with, horrible trade deals, tariffs, and you can put a country into starving, banana republics, right? So without ever firing a bullet, or marching an army, or whatever you want to call it. So if you were going to make the world like a holistic good place, I mean, some people fear the world government, and it depends on how is it going to look. Is it going to look like a big lockdown where all the big people in power take over, because that's what everyone's afraid of? But if everyone was just open up their borders and just say, let's all live in Kumbaya land, that would be great, but it's unrealistic,
Yeah.
I don't know how we're ever going to get there as a society, because people are the way they are. It's human nature. And, that's if AI doesn't wipe us out in a couple of years anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess, what I think will probably work is if each individual nation or state, they had like free movement to a degree, but also a situation where they were self-sufficient. So like, a lot of the global trade is like what you're talking about, how they could affect other countries because they need things from other countries. And if each one was like, okay, we can fend for ourselves and we willingly choose to work with you, that's different. It just doesn't seem like, it seems like more of like a grab for resources.
Well, that's the thing, right? Every state, just about every state, can sustain their people with food that they produce. and not so much Antarctica, right? Uh,
Right.
but if we're talking about trade, we're not just talking about the necessities. We're talking about, ink and silk and cobalt, the things that you need for clothes, the things that you need for computers and processors. Those things are limited to certain places, you know? And if you're not going to trade, then technology is going to stop advancing, or it'll advance for some and not others. And then some people are not going to be happy with that, you know?
Now, do you think that that's just because we only know a certain way? Like maybe there's other advances that we just haven't considered because we're used to trading in these specific methods. Like, okay, I need these items versus these items. Well, maybe you could make it work with what you have. You just never tried because you said they already figured it out. Let's use their method, you know?
Possible. I
Just something
mean,
to think about.
yeah, I mean, look, lithium ion batteries have revolutionized batteries, right? But they're not the only show in town. Nickel zinc batteries have just the same, very, very highly comparable as along the lines of the longevity. And they also don't have the overheating problem. So, you can get nickel and zinc just about anywhere, but you can only get cobalt in a limited places. So, but there's other things that you need. We need gold, right? If we're going to make motherboards and stuff like that. So gold is not as, I mean, it's a rare commodity, right? But there's lots of mines in places around the world, not so many in America anymore, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are some things you would need if you're going to go the most direct route, right? You always try to take the path of least resistance, but sometimes, you try to build up what you can on your own, and it has to be symbiotic. I feel like it only becomes a problem if like one person has everything and the other person just needs, all they can do is trade for it, it has to be where you need something and I need something from you, and that's where it becomes symbiotic. Otherwise it's just going to be the haves and the have nots, and it just seems like the haves are trying to make the rules for everybody, and sometimes people don't want to follow those rules, and that's where we get into wars and things.
Right. It's also a power grab. It's money. So you've got these mines where these things are mined. Who's in control of those mines? Is it the government or is it whoever's got the most guns?
Well, it's whoever has the most force, which would be the guns in that case, you know.
Right. Right.
But the most the I would say the most advanced technology we have right now is the communication, generally speaking, right? Like when the radio first came out, people were able to speak to each other, and it kind of revolutionized all combat and everything. It's like, hey, I can know what's going on over there. It only takes a few people to contend with an army that can't communicate with each other, you know? So
That's
I
how
think,
Rome fell.
yeah. So these religions started, and then they created these imaginary lines, and then it just became a power grab. And I just think that if we get back to seeing each other as, hey, you're a human being just like me, you may believe something different, but it doesn't mean that we have to fight over it. And you know, you can determine what happens to you after you die, just like we do, without forcing the
Others.
without forcing the issue. Yeah,
Just try to convince them. If that doesn't work, okay, you believe what you want to believe, and I'll believe what I want to believe.
exactly. It's just I think it's a matter of being able to convince someone of what you think. Otherwise, if you're not convincing, then you're kind of showing that the only way to get people to do what you want is by force, and then that only breeds what's the word? It breeds like a contempt for whoever's in power, and then that will boil over at some point. So you're never going to reach that sort of like peaceful state, because there's always going to be people that are like angry or hate what's going on, you know.
Yep. Yeah, and
But
just we're way past moving to the next topic, but the last thing just to add on to what you just said is never in history has the people that have forced their beliefs on other people, have they been the good guys?
never.
Never.
But that's unfortunately that's how that's it takes a while for that to actually take place, though, like for the people to be discontent to the point where they'll actually do something about it. And all of our luxuries make us feel content for a lot longer than we otherwise would be.
Oh, absolutely.